Denver Broncos OTAs start on Tuesday. Which quarterback is going to be taking the opening snap? I want to bring in this article from Mike Kliss, who addresses the top 9 storylines going into OTAs for the Denver Broncos. The first one and the most obvious one is Bo, Zach, or Jarrett. Which quarterback is going to be the Broncos QB1 as we head into Tuesday? The Broncos have been doing walkthrough drills throughout the past week, so technically we already know, or at least they already know, who the quarterback order is going to be. According to Mike Kliss, it seems that it's going to be Jarrett Stidham in the position where he may be the Broncos QB1 at the moment, but is trailing the race for the season opening starter. So essentially, Jarrett Stidham is going to take those first snaps at OTAs, and he's going to be the quarterback, at least for now, that's going to get all of those first team reps. How long that continues, we don't know. Then the question becomes, is Zach Wilson going to be the number 2, or is Bo Nix going to be the number 2? If you listen to what Mike Kliss said a couple of weeks ago on 9 News, he said that Zach Wilson is probably in the best position to be the number 2 quarterback right now, but that was before rookie minicamp, and Bo Nix really impressed in rookie minicamp. Maybe he impressed enough where he will be able to usurp Zach Wilson as the number 2 quarterback and get those second team reps right out the gate. That would be absolutely awesome, and that would showcase just how confident the Denver Broncos are in Bo Nix's development at this point in time. So right now is a good situation for Bo Nix to be in because he doesn't necessarily have to be rushed into things, but at the same time, the Denver Broncos want him to be the guy sooner rather than later. And Kliss also says here that Jarrett Stidham is going to have to be in a position where he'll have to beat out Wilson by a good margin in order to stick as the top option, be it QB2 or even QB1. The second main storyline to follow here is, has Javonte Williams returned to form? He averaged 4.4 yards per carry in his rookie season, and that went to a 3.6 yards per carry last year after suffering a torn ACL and other ligament damage in 2022. However, if you look at the final 4 games from Javonte Williams last year, his legs were just gone. He was averaging just 2.64 yards per carry, 47 attempts for 124 yards. That's not good. Kliss alludes in this article that the Denver Broncos do believe in Javonte Williams, but they very clearly made some moves to have insurance just in case Pookie doesn't return to form, and that would be Blake Watson and Audric Estime. Estime figures to be the main guy threatening the position of one Javonte Williams. Also, at the same time, I think Blake Watson could be threatening a guy like Samaje Perine, but what separates Perine, of course, is the fact that he is able to be that pass-protecting running back using his big frame on third downs. That might be why Samaje Perine keeps his job over somebody like Blake Watson. And this article has multiple typos. Perine's name is spelled wrong right here. And Kliss also says that Jaleel McLaughlin will bring the occasional packages of speed plays, kind of the same niche role that he held last year. Now, how much is Courtland Sutton missing with his unofficial holdout? Right now, he's not missing anything in terms of finances, but he is missing very valuable experience with his young quarterback, Bo Nix. This is the time where those personal relationships should be developed, and that's not happening here, and that's something that I have a big problem with. Courtland Sutton only has $2 million guaranteed left on his deal, and that is this year alone. He has no guaranteed money left on his deal for 2025, which he has a big problem with, understandably so. However, I want Courtland to at least be in the building, developing that relationship and developing that chemistry with Bo Nix just from a personal standpoint, not necessarily on the field. Courtland Sutton could do what's called a hold in and still be present for all the meetings and that stuff, but he's not going to participate in any on the field drills, any strength and conditioning drills. Well, he could probably still do strength and conditioning, but no like on the field drills that would significantly risk him getting injured as they hammer out these contract details. I think Courtland Sutton might get some more guaranteed money for this season and maybe drop the final year of his deal, allowing him to be a free agent at the end of this year. That's just a hunch that I have, but I could see the Denver Broncos proposing that solution in order to bring Courtland Sutton back into the fold for 2024. If he continues his holdout into mandatory minicamp June 11th through June 13th, that's when the Denver Broncos can start fining him for not showing up. Right now during OTAs, it is technically voluntary, but best be sure that Sean Payton is going to take into account that you didn't show up for these very, very critical workouts. Next thing to monitor here is the third season of charm for Greg Dulcich. I made a video earlier today talking about how Pro Football Focus ranked the Denver Broncos tight end room as the worst in the NFL, and that's an assessment that I strongly agree with. That can all change if Greg Dulcich is able to stay healthy and he's able to fill that role that he was drafted to fill all the way back in 2022. In 2023, before he got injured, though, he was being utilized as a big slot receiver in training camp in the preseason predominantly for the Denver Broncos. He wasn't really being utilized as a true inline tight end. I'm curious if Greg Dulcich has maybe tried to improve his blocking skills a little bit, which would allow him to be utilized a little bit more as a true inline tight end. That would be awesome if we could get the same level of production out of Greg Dulcich that we anticipated when we drafted him. But, as I've said before, the Denver Broncos cannot depend on that, and they have not adequately addressed insurance in the event that Greg Dulcich is not able to stay healthy. They can hope that Lucas Kroll develops into something special. He's got all of the athletic tools, but he's got similar deficiencies as a blocker as Greg Dulcich. And also, you have to realize that there's a certain ceiling that you have to just anticipate with undrafted players. They can certainly exceed that ceiling. Many of them do, but you have to temper expectations and not depend on a player of Lucas Kroll's caliber to be an impact player and fill a significant role on your football team until he goes out there and proves it. And to this point in time, I just don't feel like Lucas Kroll has gone out there and proved it. Adam Troutman is just not a starting caliber tight end. He was the Broncos' de facto starting tight end last year, but it was not good whatsoever. Didn't even eclipse 300 yards receiving, was bad as a blocker. Adam Troutman is somebody who I am very infuriated having to watch play for the Denver Broncos again, quite frankly. But hopefully somebody can step up in this tight end room. Hopefully it's Greg Dulcich and really be that immediate impact player that they were expected to be. Number 5, what will the Denver Broncos defensive line look like? Here's where another one of those typos is. Chris Myers Franklin, and it's in there twice, man. John Franklin Myers is obviously who he was trying to reference there, but he mixed it up with Chris Abrams Drain, and somehow this even got past the editors. Love you, Mike, but man, this article is filled with typos. But reverting back to the defensive line conversation for the Denver Broncos, we think that on paper it's going to be an improved unit because of the additions of Malcolm Roach, John Franklin Myers, Angelo Blackson was brought in, a guy who had some experience with Vance Joseph. DJ Jones was retained. He was somebody who a lot of people anticipated would be cut as we headed into the offseason. And then Elijah Garcia, he's a guy we can't forget about as well, somebody who showed a lot of flashes in the preseason last year. I think that Garcia could be in line for an even bigger role. The Broncos' run defense was putrid last year, and a good chunk of that was because they were weak as hell up front. I'm hoping that this year it's going to be different with the additions of JFM and Malcolm Roach. Both of those guys are cloggers in the middle, which is exactly what the Denver Broncos defensive line needs desperately. Another big question is who replaces Josie Jewell at the inside linebacker spot next to Alex Singleton? Cody Barton, a 6-year veteran, will get the first chance. He was Bobby Wagner's backup for 3 years in Seattle, then became a starter 2 years ago for the Seahawks, and last season for the Washington Commanders. He had one of his better games, honestly, last year against the Denver Broncos. I know that Commanders fans were collectively frustrated with Cody Barton at times last year. There's a lot of anti-Cody Barton propaganda on Commanders Twitter. It's honestly kind of insane how much Commanders fans don't like this guy. But the Denver Broncos liked him enough to give him a 1-year, $2.5 million contract. Jonas Griffith is somebody who's going to challenge Cody Barton, and I think Griffith wants to go out there and prove that he can be a starting caliber player again. The Broncos were starting him in 2022 prior to him going down with a season-ending injury, and then he tore his ACL in training camp last year when he was playing some really good football. It sucks that the injuries have really bitten Jonas Griffith, and he's, again, somebody that if the Denver Broncos can get some good production out of him, it is house money. If Jonas Griffith emerges as a starter, then the Denver Broncos hit jackpot with him. Cody Barton's here just in case that does not happen, but I think deep down the Denver Broncos are hoping that Jonas Griffith could slip into that role. And then Cliff mentions the undrafted rookie Lavelle Bailey as another possibility as a preseason surprise. Who will be the boundary corner opposite Pat Surtain? This is where Cliff mentions something a little bit interesting to me, because I'm somebody who's envisioned Chris Abrams-Draine as more of an inside guy at the NFL level, and I anticipated that he would play in dime situations for the Denver Broncos. Cliff says, however, that the vision for Abrams-Draine is on the outside, on the boundary, not in the slot at nickel or dime. Obviously, at nickel, the Denver Broncos have their guy of the future in Jaquan McMillan, but I thought that Abrams-Draine would be the guy on the other side of him when they were in multiple slot corner packages in the dime. That's not going to be the case here, and I find that very, very interesting. But obviously, the guys that are most likely to win that boundary corner spot include Riley Moss as well as Levi Wallace. Jim Leonard, the new Denver Broncos defensive backs coach, is going to be able to pick the cream of the crop of those players. And since the Denver Broncos envision more of an outside role for Chris Abrams-Draine, low-key, I'm really hoping that he wins that job because he has the highest ceiling out of all of these players. Damari Mathis, if we remember, was a draft pick of the Ajero Evero, Christian Parker, Nathaniel Hackett coaching regime. So he's not somebody who really fits into this current defensive scheme that the Denver Broncos are running. I highly anticipate that Damari Mathis is not going to make it out of training camp, and he will be a cut candidate for the Denver Broncos. He is certainly strongly on the roster bubble. Is Marvin Mims ready to step up as a number 2 type receiver? I'm somebody who has been very critical of Marvin Mims because when you look at his advanced route tree, that's really hard to get out. He was only getting open on go balls last year. He was not really getting open on anything short to intermediate, not getting open on slants, not getting open on digs. He wasn't getting open on double moves. It was pretty much strictly go routes for him. If he wants to be a number 2 receiver in the NFL or even be a starting slot in the NFL, he's going to have to improve his route running acumen in the short to intermediate part of the field. You couldn't even really run him on a post last year. It was just all straight line vertical stuff for him, and that's going to have to change with Mims anticipated to be an impact player for the Denver Broncos. He's going to have to grow into that role, and that's going to take time. That's why the Denver Broncos brought in a veteran player in Josh Reynolds in the event that that doesn't happen. Troy Franklin is somebody who I view in a very similar mold where he's kind of one of those more straight line downhill runners, getting open really on go routes. But I also think that Troy Franklin does have a little bit more route running acumen than Marvin Mims does. So if Marvin Mims doesn't step up into the plate, then we might see Troy Franklin out there a little bit sooner than we initially anticipated. And then finally, we're going to talk some punters here. Will it be Riley Dixon or Trenton Gill? I've also been very critical of Riley Dixon in his second stint in a Broncos uniform. He's got a really powerful leg, but sometimes he's inconsistent with it. Sometimes he has too many touchbacks. Sometimes he'll shank his punts. I just think Riley Dixon is a very, very inconsistent punter. The Broncos brought in a high upside player in Trenton Gill, who had some big time struggles for the Chicago Bears last year. The biggest issue with him was him outkicking his coverage. If the Broncos special teams brass, led by Ben Kotwica and Mike Westhoff, can get the best out of Gill and coach out some of those kinks, the Broncos might have their punter of the future, who is certainly cheaper than Riley Dixon. And like Kliss says here, it's not the first time the Denver Broncos made a cost-cutting maneuver at punter. You'll remember in 2022, they moved on from Sam Martin when he refused to take a pay cut, and they went with Corliss Waitman as their starting punter. Waitman did not perform well, and that led Denver to sign Dixon as a free agent. So I would urge Denver to be cautious with this because Trenton Gill hasn't exactly performed well in his time with the Chicago Bears. But if Ben Kotwica and Mike Westhoff really, really like him, in particular Westhoff, that's the guy whose opinion I really, really trust here, then I really, really feel like the Denver Broncos should go in the direction of Trenton Gill. I trust Mike Westhoff's judgment on this one. All right, Broncos country, let me know in the comments section below, what are some of the other top storylines you are monitoring as Denver Broncos OTAs begin? And are you excited to see Bo Nix officially get on the field with the veterans and get into the mix in that quarterback competition? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are two free and easy ways to show your support. It helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out, and it helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country just like you and me. And until next time, guys, I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.